It is Reconciliation Week. Is Australia ready to hear its own truth? Are we brave enough to learn the atrocities that have happened in the past and the present? There's deaths in custody, children being removed. It's happening right now a faster rate today. The gap's not closing. So my question is, how will Australia find its heart?
Mitch.
Why'd you pick me, Haim? No, look, to be honest, it's a great question. And I feel like I can only hope that, you know, we just get into schools. I feel like we have to educate the kids, you know, and educate the teachers. You know, I hear numerous stories from kids about the remarks from teachers in schools as well. So I think it's important that we educate teachers, we educate educators, and we get to the kids, because the reality is that's where we've got a greater scope to build capacity, build empathy, build a heart that's geared towards hearing our story, sitting with us and hearing our truths. You know, we can't turn our head away anymore to the truths of what happened here. And it's not to point fingers, and I don't come from that position, because I want to bring us all together so we can heal. I'm crying out for healing for my people, because we hear this term all the time, you're resilient, but that doesn't mean we want to be resilient. We want to be free. We want to be trauma-free. This transgenerational trauma stuff, it is scientifically proven that it can be passed on through the DNA. It is real. So to answer your question, I hope with all of my heart that we are coming to a position in this nation where we can stop turning our head away, open our hearts, and just grow a little bit of capacity for our story. Because the truth is the stolen generations, the majority of it, and when I say these words, it's not to trigger any of the old people that were taken, they weren't necessarily birthed out of love. Our women were raped and absolutely bastardised. And here we sit today with our women like 35 to 80 times more likely to be hospitalised due to domestic violence. That's our women. There's nothing more royal or sacred on this planet than our women. We are from the oldest living continual culture on the planet, and we are so overrepresented in this hell of domestic violence, and it starts as a root where we have to go to. And in order to face that root, we have to hit it front on and go, you know what, I didn't do it. But rather than turn away and go, that's not my fault, I'm not sorry, it's like a brother's, sister's, friend's, brother's, auntie's uncle passed away and you heard about it and you go, you know what, are you okay? I'm really sorry that happened. I'm going to empathise with you. I'm going to open up my heart and give you a hug because I'm sorry. Let's talk about it. You know, our people are dying in jails, overrepresented in incarceration. We make up 3%. There was a statistic the other day that, you know, 41% of in out-of-home care of our kids that are in foster care and whatnot are Aboriginal that make up that percentage. 41%. You know, it's growing. Our kids are still being taken away. We've got a new generation of stolen generations. You know, we're dying, we're killing ourselves. We're absolutely riddled in chronic disease and illness. You're going out into remote communities, there's inadequate human resources, the list goes on. And I'm not here to point and condemn and point out all these negativities, but I am here to cry out and say, please empathise with us. Please get on our story. Please listen to our story, because we need you. We need everyone. You know, and we all need to come together and love and accept one another, regardless of race, religion, gender, sexuality and class. Because you know what, our young people need all of you, because our young people are killing themselves. Our young people are dying every day. Our women are getting bashed every day. And that's not me condemning my Aboriginal brothers, because our women are with all men from all walks of life, and it's not okay, and we have to put an end to it. Our people are dying of type 2 diabetes, and we sit and we talk about type 2 diabetes like it's a common cold. You know, our people out in remote communities are spending more time hooked up to dialysis than being out there in the bush and being connected and healing. So what we need is to grow capacity for our story. And there'll be people here tonight that will comment and they'll go, you're not really a black fella, look at you, look at your skin, what are you, 1% in your finger? It's not about that, it's about our spirit. It's about what's inside of our heart, our Gii Dhuwi, our heart and our spirit. There's so many mob like me that are this colour because of our past, the stolen generations, and because of the obvious. Our parents get together and they marry from different nationalities because of this beautiful culture that we've got here. But what you can't take away is our spirit, the resilience of our ancestors. They're here. So to answer your question, we must come together. You know, we're in the final hour and we need each and every single one of you from every walk of life so we can journey together into a greater future.
Mitch, you're so powerful. You're setting off the alarm in the building. Something's gone quiet with that. Jen Robinson, that question was about whether Australia is ready to hear its truth. There are some difficult truths. Is Australia ready to hear them?
Look, 70% of Australians support the Uluru Statement from the Heart, and I think it is about time that our country accepts this generous offer and invitation from Indigenous Australians. We can't have reconciliation without truth, and that's why the truth-telling process, which is part of the Uluru Statement that has been asked for by
You're talking about Makarrata, right?
Exactly, is such an important thing because so many Australians do not understand the extent of the injustices that were perpetrated against Indigenous Australians. And without properly understanding that, we can't understand the collective trauma and ongoing trauma that Indigenous Australians continue to suffer. But it's not just about truth-telling. We have to give Indigenous people a voice. The reason that we continue to have bad policy outcomes, deaths in custody, 475 since 1991, 6 in the past few months, more children than ever, double the number of Aboriginal children being taken from their families since the apology to the stolen generation. These outcomes have to change, and it's on us as white Australians to take this up, to hassle our elected representatives, to stand with 3% of our population are Indigenous peoples and help them achieve the justice that they deserve. It's about who we are as a nation and reflects how we put ourselves out to ourselves and to the rest of the world. We are one of the few liberal democracies in the world that properly recognises Indigenous people, and that has to change.
Dave Sharma, so much of the, I suppose, debate since the Uluru Statement has been about a third chamber, about constitutional recognition. But Makarrata and truth-telling is central to the Uluru Statement. What are your views? How should Australia do Makarrata? How should we hear these truths? What function does that play?
Well, I'd say, first of all, that this has to be a very high national priority. I mean, this leaves us incomplete as a nation. Our failure to properly reach a just and proper and equitable settlement with our Indigenous, the First Nations people here, our Indigenous Australians, the fact that they're not properly recognised in the Constitution, and they should be as the First Nations peoples, the fact that they don't have a means directly of contributing on laws that are made about them. This is the only group of people in Australia about who we make laws for people of a particular race, but there's no mechanism to hear their voice, and this is what the voice co-design process is about. But also truth-telling and reconciliation, Makarrata, the other key element of the Uluru Statement. Look, we are going through the co-design process now for the voice, and I want to see that moved ahead and advanced. Truth-telling, I'm in the hands of people like Mitch and others to tell us how do we take this to the next stage. What does it involve? What is needed from us as the government? What's needed from us as a people? But I'm all ears because this is a blemish on the Australian soul, and it's something we need to fix.
It is a vexed political issue, though, Ed Husic. Do you think our politicians are ready to hear these truths?
I think they need to undertake that process themselves individually, and I'll explain why. I represent in Chifley, which sits in Darragland, one of the largest urban-based Aboriginal communities in the country. And obviously through my role as an MP, I get to hear firsthand from Aboriginal people from all over the place what's happened. But the thing that really accelerated my understanding was reading Bruce Pascoe's Dark Emu. And when you go through, and the reason I mention this is when you go through and you see the systems that were in place in terms of how people lived their lives here before colonisation, this realisation had dawned on me. I was sorry not just for the injustice, but I was sorry that I never took the time to learn, that I never understood what was going on. We never learnt this at school, right? And then you start to think, you're stopped from speaking your languages, celebrating your culture, being with your people, your children separated. And truth-telling is important because everything else that we want to be able to do has to come from a point of understanding why. And the project that existed in this country for so long was about making Aboriginal people in this country forget who they were. That truth is very hard to hear, but you have to if you want to do all the other things. And Mitch, when you say, as you said a few moments ago, to understand, a lot of the people in our area, they're not after guilt. They don't want to make people feel guilty. They want us to do what we would do if something had happened to us that fundamentally. which is just appreciate what I went through and then we can talk. And that's why this is important. And that's what we've got to do.
Randa, Abdel-Fattah, to go back to the question, is Australia ready to hear these truths? What do you think?
I think there's a lot of... Well, I have to first foreground that I'm speaking as a settler migrant, the daughter of settler migrants, and I understand what it means to be dispossessed of your land. And I think that we need, as a community, to speak less about people's feelings and how that I'm not going to point the finger at somebody or guilt, and actually address the issue of Indigenous sovereignty here, because we do our acknowledgements of country and we stand up and we speak about, you know, having respect for Indigenous culture, and we still have apocalyptic fits in this country about changing Australia Day or abolishing Australia Day. We still cannot understand. We're talking about truth-telling and we still celebrate Invasion Day in this country, and we dismiss Indigenous people's, you know, cries about the fact that you are celebrating a day that represents the loss of their land, that represents the invasion of their lands, the genocide of their people. So, I mean, I think it's very self-indulgent for politicians to talk about, you know, respecting Indigenous stories, and we still can't commit to action. We can talk about, you know, truth-telling, but we still haven't implemented reports about deaths in custody, about Indigenous children being taken from their homes. And I also think that it's not in my place to talk about this. I feel deeply uncomfortable even commenting here. As a settler migrant, all I want to do is listen to Indigenous people and let them lead the discussion, let them lead the solutions. They're not homogenous, so not everybody accepts the idea of treaty, not everybody accepts the idea of constitutional recognition, and that's why I feel deeply conflicted even offering an opinion about this. I think it's something that Indigenous people need to lead the conversation, and we need to go and listen to them and take their cues about what needs to be done.
Is there... To that point, though, Mitch, briefly, is there a need, though, for non-Indigenous Australians to actually take a position on this and start to say, I believe these things are important?
100%. But I feel like in taking that position, you're putting down a textbook and you're going into your local community to sit with our people, to form a relationship, to have a cup of tea, to hear our stories, and to feel. You know, and you will feel a lot of love, a lot of joy, a lot of happiness, but you will also feel the raw effects of transgenerational trauma and the stolen generation. And I mean, we get that a lot, you know, get over it, it happened. But the reality is, a sister, Nerida Jacobs on Studio 10, she posted the other day and her dad was taken. So there you have it, a sister that's in front of you every day, and that's her father right there. It's not, you know, there's a lot of us, even from my generation, when our parents were born, they were considered flora and fauna. And there's also a lot of us today that haven't had kids yet. So it's like not getting over it, it's preparing for what's ahead, because there's babies that are about to be born and it was their grandmother or grandfather that were considered animals and plants, and they're about to feel that pain. So we haven't even gotten to that stage yet. But I feel like we need allies. We need people that have the capacity to empathise and get passionate, because we need forward thinkers, you know, people that are going to get in there and shake it up for us. You know, we make up 3% of the population. We need, you know, another like 47% to even nearly get halfway in people being with us, you know. So we need as many people as we can get. And I just urge and encourage everyone to immerse yourself in your local community. Get familiar, know the aunties, the uncles, the elders. You know, learn a bit about the local language and let that snowball. And as you get educated, you'll grow and grow this capacity for us, because we need everyone on board this journey so we can make change.